I am the opinionated idiot, and tonight we're going to talk more about Idaho murder suspect Brian Kohberger. Let me play the intro and we'll get into it. Friday, February 17, 2023. Welcome back to the Opinionated Idiot live YouTube show. I'm back, baby. Feeling a little bit under the weather. Got a little hoarse in the throat. Had a cold the last couple days, but I cannot leave you guys alone. I have to be back here. I have to stream. We have lots of stuff to talk about. One thing that I'm going to do and talk about, and I will continue to talk about on this channel until the truth is told, until the truth is spoken about, until this federal government does something about it. Hashtag Ohio chemical disaster. Hashtag Ohio chemical disaster. I'm going to continue to talk about this. And I am appalled that this federal government is doing nothing about it right now. The Joe Biden administration is failing the people of Ohio right now. But that's for another day, my friends. That's for another day. Let me check my notes. Tonight, we're going to get into Brian Kohberger's behavior towards women that have sparked a probe. I have some Banfeld segments we're going to go through. Does Brian Kohberger have an ethical conflict in representation? Public defender Ann Taylor, assigned to represent Brian Kohberger, previously represented 3 of the parents of the 2 victims. We're going to talk about that. I got a segment from Nancy Grace. I know, can be a little cringy, but the most important thing is that her guest, Chris McDonough, is a case founder and director and former homicide detective, and he's going to talk about did the Idaho murder suspect Brian Kohberger possibly study a floor plan before he went into that residence that night, allegedly went into that residence that night. And then from the interview room, Chris McDonough's YouTube channel, they have Kerry Rawson's daughter of the Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. And she's going to talk about the similarities between Brian Kohberger and her father. So let's get into the first segment tonight. We're going to go to the widescreen, pull this up. This is from the Dan Abrams live show. And this is going to talk about the behavior that Brian Kohberger, that sparked probe with Brian Kohberger. Let's play through this.
We're learning more tonight about the suspect in the Idaho murders and some troubling behavior he exhibited in the weeks before and after the murders, but before he was arrested. Happened on the campus of Washington State University, where he was a PhD student in criminology. Behavior that was so troubling, according to the New York Times, the university launched an investigation into Kohberger of his conduct towards women after getting complaints from female students and his performance as a teaching assistant, ultimately leading to his firing from his paid teaching position in late December, just 11 days before his arrest. All while Moscow police were conducting an investigation of their own into the killings of the 4 students on November 13th. The Times report lays out the timeline of trouble for Kohberger at Washington State, beginning on September 23rd, about a month into his first semester there, and this is a month and a half before the killings. According to the school, Kohberger had an altercation with the professor for whom he was a teaching assistant. No details on what it was about. But after the incident, records show Kohberger met with a university official to discuss norms of professional behavior.
Dude's an incel. Dude's an incel. 100% giving off that vibe. 100% giving off the incel vibe.
Then October 21st, we're now a few weeks before the murders, a professor emailed him about the ways in which he had failed to meet expectations as a TA thus far in the semester. It's previously been reported that students had complained about Kohberger's harsh grading as a TA during the time leading up to the murders. November 2nd, 11 days before, department leaders met with Kohberger to discuss an improvement plan.
I mean, you can see the anger that's been building inside of this guy. You know, all the signs are there. The dude definitely has incel vibes. 100%. 100%.
Then December 9th, nearly 4 weeks after the killings, the school reports Kohberger had another altercation with his professor. On December 15th, we have video of Kohberger being stopped by police while on the road with his father, leading to his Pennsylvania home. And at about the same time, school officials met to discuss Kohberger's future as a TA in their end-of-the-year meeting, investigating reports from some women that he made them feel uncomfortable, and in one instance was accused of following a female student to her car. The university apparently wasn't able to prove any wrongdoing, but still, it was all enough for the university to fire him on December 19th, the official termination in a letter, which Ashley Banfield got a hold of. Then December 30th, Kohberger was arrested for the murders of the 4 Idaho students. Joining us now, Mike Baker, Seattle bureau chief for the New York Times, who wrote the article revealing the timeline. Thanks very much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. So do we have a sense at all of what the primary cause was of his firing? Was it the arguments with the teachers, or was it the reports of his conduct with women?
Yeah, right. You had sort of these 2 tracks of problems that were going on. As we understand, the issues with the women they determined was not founded. They couldn't conclude any wrongdoing. So that ended up not being a factor in their decision to fire him. What ended up being the major factor was going through the recent history with him of problems that he had with his professors and other superiors there, including 2 altercations. We had been told.
I still look at him when I see him and I see videos of him. You know, he's not a very big guy, you know, by accounts, you know, like what, 6 foot, 175, but he's very broad up in the shoulder. I'm sure they probably have a vest on him too. I mean, it looks like he might have a stab vest on or a bulletproof vest or something, but for a what I would say a smaller guy, and I'm relatively pretty, I wouldn't say barrel chested, but I'm more all shoulders and chest in my upper body. And I don't know if he works out. You know, I work out pretty regularly. I'm not saying I'm this crazy buff guy, but I'm athletic. You know, for a smaller guy, he definitely has, from what I can see here, some good upper body strength. I mean, he's a pretty strong dude. SC checking in saying, I got the dates mixed up for the live. I'm traveling today. If your live is still on Sunday, I'll be able to. Yeah, I can throw up a live on Sunday. I know that you're supposed to call in, but why don't we do this? I'm going to do the Alec Murdaugh trial on Monday night, but I'll do something on Sunday. You know, we can plan for that. If you want the number, SC, the number's scrolling below. Save that in your phone. You can text me through that number and we can communicate or whatever. And you can just basically give me a little bit of a rundown, you know, what you want to talk about. And what I can do is we'll set up a live stream on Sunday. You can just come over and join. I don't know if you have the capability to, you know, I don't know if you want to just call in or if you want to, you know, come live. I can also drop you the link. If you don't want to show your face, that's perfectly fine. You can turn off your camera and just do your voice, whatever way, you know, communicate me. You have my email address is scrolling at the below as well. It's theopinionatedidiot@gmail.com. And also you have the telephone number. So if you want to text or communicate via Gmail or email, God, I sounded really old right there. Communicate with me through my Gmail. We'll set something up and have you talk about your similar situation. Basically, if I'm just give some context here, SC was involved in or knew someone that was involved in a particular situation, like what happened in Ohio. So I'd love for her to come on and talk about, what's going on. I know we promised tonight. It's okay. She's traveling tonight, but we're going to set something up for Sunday and give you guys some content. But definitely we'll continue on with the show here. Essie, thank you so much for checking in. I hope your travels are safe. If you want to hang out this evening for the rest of the show, that'd be great. Yeah, my live streams have been all kind of messed up. I've been sick, and tonight's actually been the first time I felt better. So let's continue through here. And like I said, I was saying Kohberger. If that sounds like a plan, Essie, let me know down there in the chat. You have the text capability or my email. We'll do that. And like I was saying, Kohberger, he looks particularly a very strong guy up top. And that's probably because he was a much bigger guy and he lost that weight. I was a much bigger guy. And what I did was I lost the weight, but I also worked out and built all that, that muscle up in my shoulders and my chest. So, the capability of possibly and allegedly, murdering someone, definitely, he definitely has the physical strength to do it. That is if it is him. Let me just check something really quick. We'll go back to the live show. Give me 2 seconds. And okay, we'll get back to the live show here. So let's keep playing through this video. Let's go.
From a couple of sources familiar with what was going on, that these were verbal altercations with a professor, and that sort of a standard of behavior of being a professional in the workplace was the kind of thing they were considering at that end of the year meeting in deciding whether to cut his funding and eliminate him as a teaching assistant.
Considering how scrutinized this case has been, I'm sort of stunned that a lot of this information is only coming out now. Was it tough information to uncover? Can you talk at all about how you were able to get it?
Yeah, it's been tough to get to. The university has not given any indication that this kind of thing was going on behind the scenes. Their statements were essentially that he finished out his semester there in December, and they helped law enforcement search his office at the time of his arrest. And other than that, they haven't discussed it. Their position right now is that federal privacy law essentially prohibits them from talking about the details of his time at WSU. Even though, he was a teaching assistant, he was in a position of leading some of these students. And so we're hoping to get more records eventually under that premise that he was effectively working there.
Any other suggestion that there may be other troubling behavior that Kohberger exhibited at the school?
You talked a little bit about it. There were a lot of concerns among students about the type of grading he was doing, how harsh he was. And then there was the aspects of concerns about women.
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation now.
That was a small segment there, basically talking about, Kohberger's action towards women. It's, definitely has the incel vibe there going on. I really like the coverage that News Nation continues to do on this particular subject because, there's not really a lot of activity on it right now. So a lot of things are being, dormant, but, we're going to continue to talk about it here on this channel because it's, we got a long time before that trial in June. Hopefully that trial in June, and we get to see a little bit more of, what's actually going on. The thing I was just thinking about today too is that, a lot of people go back and say, there's not all this sufficient evidence in this case. There's not so much. And, I've talked about this a bunch of times, but I was watching some of the Alec Murdaugh trial today, and just the intricate detail that they were laying out of just where his Alec's GPS was locating. And they literally were breaking it down slide by slide, minute by minute, location by location. Where it was pinging, what towers it was going off of, and they had a detailed map of. You're going to see a lot of that in this Kohberger case if this goes to trial. And that's. And you're going to find out when you read a blanket statement, you read a blanket news article, you're just going to get little blips and blurbs of what's actually going on. But when you see something go to trial, there's so much stuff that comes out. I'm hearing things in that Alec. Alec trial, the Murdoch trial, there's voicemails and there's, handwritten letters and you're finding out conversations that he had with his wife, his kid that happened 2 or 3 years ago. And there's possibility of a murder suicide. And we find out that he's involved in drugs and doing drugs. It's crazy. The things that you're going to find out when things go to trial. I get 7 people watching this, only 3 upvotes. If you guys could just quickly hit that upvote button, I really appreciate it. It gets this live stream out in the algorithm and brings more people in so we can all enjoy this content here. Please just hit that upvote button. All right, so next on the agenda, we're going to go through a Banfield segment, and it talks about maybe some ethical problems with the public defender that's representing Kohberger and Taylor. And because she has previously represented 3 of the parents of the 2 victims, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, the way that the stars have aligned in all of this is just strange. But let's play up these segments. Basically, she's going to talk about the ethical content, and then I believe just after that, kind of clears the story, redacts some of the retracts some of the conversation that she says about this, and we'll play through both of these segments, and then we'll get to the Chris McDonough segment about Kohberger possibly studying a floor plan before going into the residence that night. So let's play this. Hang on one second. Let me just pull these up real quick. All right. From Banfield. Let's play this.
I know somebody else who gets a little agita when it comes to this. And that's Mark Garagos. And the reason I know Mark Garagos gets agita with it is because he has a lot of high-profile cases in his past. He's here to help me break this all down. Of course, you know him. He's a criminal defense attorney. He's the co-host of the podcast Reasonable Doubt with Adam Carolla. So Garagos, I said there were 2 issues that I found in this whole conflict when it came to Ann Taylor and the 3 parents. Number 1 was that they have to be okay with it, and clearly Kara Kernodle is not. But then number 2, they have to be notified. And that didn't happen either, at least in Kara Kernodle's case. So I want to get you to weigh in on this news, Mark, that they've had this meeting. They've gone through this review process and no conflict, the judges determined. What are your thoughts?
Well, I sent you the other day, Ashley, a op-ed piece that somebody had done in which they had basically analyzed the ethical rule here without giving you any credit whatsoever, by the way, and had said that there really was no ethical conflict. And
real quick, if anybody doesn't know, this public defender actually defended Xana Kernodle's mother in a arrest for drugs. She was arrested for drugs, and Brian Kohberger's public defender actually defended her in that trial. So this is why this is just so strange and so weird. That's why there may be some ethical differences. But I when I went on to actually find out, what we're going to see here is that the judge actually had some conversations with Ann Taylor, that public defender, and kind of cleared up all of those issues. So let's keep playing through here.
Couldn't actually disagree more with the analysis. Number 1, I think you've pointed out one key thing, which is you can't do this absent a knowing waiver by the clients. And why do I say clients? Both the current client, who is the young man who was accused of these horrific crimes, and the parents of the victims of these crimes. Now, the one part I will take issue with, and you know that I agree with you on gag orders. I always think gag orders have been inverted. We talked about this the other night. Originally, gag orders were instituted in Shepard v. Maxwell, which was F. Lee Bailey's case back in the 50s, which later became the model for the fugitive. But they were originally to protect the defense. It's been perverted. It now is something that harms the defense, in my opinion. But when the lawyer Ann Taylor goes into chambers in camera, meaning she and the judge talk privately, I understand that. I've done that many a times. I will tell you when I've done it in many murder cases when a client wants to get on the stand and it may be against my advice. Hypothetically, I might go into chambers with just the client and tell the judge this is against my advice, but it's their choice. So I can understand that. You don't want to violate the attorney-client privilege or at least let the prosecutor hear it. In this case, I understand that. What I don't understand is how there can be a knowing waiver by the victim's parents,
Right.
because I just don't think that there is any way possible that there isn't going to be a discussion of that house, the use of drugs, and people going in and out. I just find that entirely too hard to believe. I don't know if the judge said, okay, if we get to that point, then we're going to do further hearings on this and we'll table it. And as of now, you don't plan on doing it. But to my mind, that is in play. And to your point, that is potentially, God forbid, from the young man's standpoint, he gets convicted and later says, I've got a 2255 writ of habeas corpus, and my lawyer was ineffective because she didn't want to go there, meaning the house and drug use and things of that nature.
AKA ineffective assistance of counsel. We hear it all the time. It's like, I don't know if it's the number one appellate issue, but yeah, if I had a dime, I'd be on a yacht in Majorca. Yeah, it's the number one. I knew you'd say that. Okay, here's the other thing. Another piece of breaking news. Yeah, okay, wait one sec, because I'm going to get you to talk about this one. So the sources that we have close to the prosecution have also told us that the prosecutors in this case are actually in favor of having her conflicted out. And I suppose I get that, because who wants to try a case twice? Who wants to do all that work and all those billable hours to the taxpayers of Idaho, and then, you know, a couple of years down the pike, after they might get a conviction, have it tossed out only to start all over again and put those families all through that again?
Well, look, the cynic in me would say, of course they want her out. She's one of the only qualified defenders in Idaho. So I can see that. But at the same time, the prosecutors have a very, I would say, easy way to raise this issue, which is to file the motion to say that they want the waivers by the respective clients. There's a U.S. Supreme Court case, I believe it's Wood, that specifically talks about what you have to do in a situation where there is a conflict. It has to be on the record. I don't know if that, and we don't know if that was done already in camera or ex parte. Remember, there's two different ways this could be done. It could be done in camera, which means the public doesn't listen to it. And it can be done ex parte, which means the prosecutor doesn't get to get in on this. Or it could be a hybrid of the two. But I would be shocked if the prosecutor hasn't at least filed the motion, maybe redacting what they think or what they think they know. But I'm surprised that so far, and I haven't checked the docket, maybe it's been done, that they haven't filed for this, because the U.S. Supreme Court generally counsels that you do this.
Thank you for watching.
All right, so we had that segment there, and then there was another segment that she came back live and actually cleared some of the ethics issues up. And let's play that really quick, and then we're going to get into kind of the meat of the bone tonight with Cold Case founder, director, and former homicide detective Chris McDonough of the Interview Room YouTube channel. He's going to talk about, did possibly the suspect Brian Kohberger study a floor plan before going into the King Road residence that evening? Then also on his channel, he had Kerry Rawson, the daughter of the BTK killer, Dennis Rader. And she's going to talk about the similarities between Kohberger and her father. So let's hear this, and then we're going to go over to that Nancy Grace video.
But tonight I'm coming back with some more exclusive material on the Idaho murder. So I hope you will stay through the next ensuing moments. I think this is one of the most important issues that has come across the radar in the Idaho murder case, because I like criminal procedure. I've been, kind of steeped in it for a long time, and I cannot stand when something gets overturned on appeal. I can't stand it because sometimes it's so preventable, right? Especially if you know in advance and you do something about it.
We got
And I
6
kind of
people
see something
watching. You guys go
percolating
down there,
here.
hit
The
that
experts know
upvote
better,
button.
and
I
they're
really would
having a
appreciate it.
field day arguing online
Help
about
get
this. And so I know
stream
it's a
out
really
into the
important issue.
algorithm.
It
Thank
has
you
to
so
do with
much for
conflict
that
of
upvote. I
interest. I know we've
appreciate
talked
that.
about it before, but I have some breaking news on this tonight. So the issue has been Brian Kohberger's public defender, Ann Taylor, right? She showed up and walked into court with him the very first time. She's a very accomplished attorney. Holy cow. She's got some real scores under her belt, right? So
It's a little scary. I'm going to be honest. This Ann Taylor scares me a little bit. This public defender. You know, she's very well known. She's been in some high profile cases. She's a good defense attorney. And I think the prosecution's going to have their hands full. I'm telling you, it's going to be a very, 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 very interesting case. The way this gets kind of battled out in court through the prosecution and the defense. You know, for me, I'm hoping it does go to trial because it will leave a lot of material that we can talk about here. But it's going to be a big tug of war back and forth. I'm telling you, they're both going to be prepared. 7 people, just please make that upvote right there. Hit that
she's
upvote
good.
button.
She's also a leader in the public defender's office. So looked like it was a pretty good match, especially for a case that was important as this. Could be a death penalty case. I'll repeat, could be a death.
So we got a question from Miracle Landy Boy. Says, do you believe he did it? I think the Brent Kopak situation has just swept under the carpet when there's so much speculation of them knowing each other and him being in the army. So my you know, I've talked about this before. I think that the evidence against the suspect Brian Kohberger right now is really strong. You have a lot of circumstantial evidence, but you also have physical evidence too that's placing him at the scene of the crime. So it's going to be up to the defense to, you know, defend that. I've also say this on my channel as well too. Everybody in America has the right to due process, has the right to a fair trial. Also, you know, has the right to go through the judicial system, and people are always innocent until proven guilty. So I think that's why, you know, this is going to end up going to trial. And I think it's going to be from a, you know, true crime perspective, from a person like myself that loves watching courtroom, you know, I guess battles or courtroom activity. I think it's going to be, I don't want to say fun because I don't want to make this a fun situation, but very interesting. You know, as I really like watching trial. I like seeing what happens in trial. Uh, Mr. O'Brien checking in saying, greetings, everyone. Greetings to you, sir. Let's keep playing through this video. And for the new people that just dropped in, we're going to get to the meat of the bone here in a second. I know. We're going to watch a Nancy Grace segment. But the most important thing is she has a fantastic guest on her show, Chris McDonough, that is a cold case founder, director, and the former homicide detective. And he's going to talk about, is it possible that the suspect, Brian Kohberger, could have studied a floor plan before going into the King, allegedly going into the King Road residence that evening. Also, I'm going to have another video that we're going to pull up, and it's Kerry Rawson's daughter of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, and she's going to talk about the similarities between Brian Kohberger and BTK. So let's keep playing through.
Penalty case. You have to have a star, but you have to have a clean
Great point,
star.
O'Brien.
Someone who has no conflicts in her past representations. And along came
I did
the
some
fact
videos on that.
she had indeed represented
O'Brien, you can go back and watch that.
The mother
about the time
of Carol
that it possibly could take to kill 4 people. It's not actually a very long time to be honest with you. And you can go back and search through my channel. You'll see videos up there. But great conversation.
Kernodle, one of the
great
alleged
question.
victims of Brian Kohberger, her client, and then 2 other parents of the victims. Right? So that, all of a sudden, it's like, it seemed so clear. Well, you cannot have represented the children of parents who are now going to be in that courtroom watching you defend
Right.
their child's alleged killer. You can't. And yet there's some wiggle room. But with all of the conflagration that happened, it turns out now there has been a meeting.
Awesome, dude.
And we have
Appreciate
sources
you.
close to the prosecution who have told us that Ann Taylor has had a meeting with the judge on this exact issue, the conflict of interest issue. Private meeting, behind closed doors, discussing all of the issues. Likely she was called in to lay out, tell me everything you did with
Right.
client A, client
The judge will
B,
want to know
and
that.
client C. Tell me
And then they'll make the
everything so that
determination.
we can exclude the possibility of a conflict. And in this review process, my source has told me that it's been cleared.
Interesting.
No conflict, according to the judge. So is that it?
Right.
I mean, Kara Northington, Ben Mogan, Corey Hatrock, all parents of the deceased victims in this case, all had Ann Taylor on their cases.
It's crazy.
Right? So it is
It's
such a
so
curious
weird.
issue. What did she tell the judge? Like, what did she lay out
Right.
to the judge in order for the judge in this case to say, nothing to see here,
Yeah.
no conflict problem? Did she see our interview? Did the judge see our interview with Ann Taylor's previous client, who she dropped on the very day she showed up in that courtroom with her brand new client, Brian Kohberger? Literally dropped her former client, Kara Northington. That's Xana
Right.
Kernodle.
You know why? Because it's gonna bring a lot of attention to her. That's why she took it. Puts her on center stage.
Mom dropped her that day, and they were still active. Like, it was still an active
Crazy.
pending case. By the way, Kara Northington had no idea that this had gone on. She had no notification of it, she told us. And did Ann Taylor know about the interview that we conducted on this program
Probably.
with Xana's mom, in which she
Probably.
laid out that she was gobsmacked by all of this,
Yeah.
that she had no idea? Thank you for watching.
All right, so just want to get you guys caught up a little bit. There was some controversy with Ann Taylor, the public defender for Brian Kohberger. Apparently, the judge is going to say that there's no conflict of interest. As we just found out, Ann Taylor represented 3 of the parents of the 2 victims. That's insane. I mean, the insanity and all the stuff that's going around in this case has just been absolutely crazy. I mean, all these coincidences, and just, it's a very strange and weird case. And again, we have a lot to talk about up until June, till this goes to trial. And then I think there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations that we have. But what I want to do now is, unfortunately, we're going to have to listen to Nancy Grace. But there's a great segment that I want to play through. Chris McDonough is a cold case founder, director, and former homicide detective. He's going to talk about, is it a possibility that the suspect, Brian Kohberger, allegedly might have studied a floor plan the evening that he went into the King Road, or before the evening that he went into the King Road residence. And then also we're going to move on after that, talk about with Kerry Ralston, the daughter of the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, and she's going to do some comparisons between her father and Brian Kohberger. So really interesting stuff here. Let's pull one of these videos up and we'll go through it. God, we're going to have to sit through Nancy Grace. All right. I apologize. Did Kohberger. I can hear her voice now.
You know what?
You know
Does
what?
it ever end
And
with Brian Kohberger,
Kohberger.
the man charged in the murders of 4 beautiful, that's the only word I can really think of to describe the Idaho University students that were slaughtered in their own beds? Joining me, a real expert, Chris McDonough, director at the Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective, host of a YouTube channel, The Interview Room, and you can find him at coldcasefoundation.com.
By the way, I got to give shout out to Nancy Grace. If you like her content, please go over and subscribe. And then also The Interview Room, Chris McDonough, go over and check out his channel. He's got a lot of stuff on there about Idaho and Brian Kohberger. He actually has gone down to the area and done a lot of video in that area too. If you want to go down and check out, what the town looks like there. But let's get through this. I think it's a really interesting segment. This is going to take a majority of the meat of the show here tonight, and then we'll end the show off with Kerry Rawson, Dennis Rader, BTK killer's daughter, in talking about the similarities between Brian Kohberger and BTK killer.
.org. I understand, Chris McDonough, that you
You're gonna
have
listen to her for
discussed
26
at
minutes.
length the specter that Brian Kohberger actually
Kohberger.
studied the floor plan of the students' home, the off-campus home, where the 4 students were murdered. Is that right?
Right, Nancy. So I had a
Wait,
chance.
wait. That was a yes,
Because
no,
the
Chris
guy,
McDonough.
fucking guy hasn't even introduced himself yet. She cuts him off. Come on, Nancy. What the fuck?
Have you spoken with an FBI
Let the
person?
poor guy talk.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to throw one question at you to start with. Okay, Chris McDonough. I first found you on YouTube in The Interview Room because I was trolling
Yeah,
for
exactly.
anything I could find out.
But this is a
about-
good segment. I'm telling you. I really want to hear Chris's perspective on this. He's got a great perspective. So unfortunately, we have to listen to fucking Nancy Grace.
the Idaho murders. This was before Kohberger was arrested. Before we even
Kohberger.
heard the name Kohberger. And you did for me what I later did for myself, but I couldn't get there in time. You beat me to it to do a slow drive through the whole area. And you did it just the way I would want to do it myself, which I did later do, going at about literally 2 miles an hour. I'm sure you had a whole convoy behind you, Chris McDonough. You were driving along the main street and talking, describing what you were seeing,
I know.
pointing the camera at it,
Jeez, man.
turning
Let the guy
left,
talk,
remember
right,
that
Casey?
gas station,
Jeez.
going up into the neighborhood where the 4 students were murdered.
I gotta say this though, it's crazy. I heard several people have driven the route that allegedly Kohberger drove that night, and I think Nancy actually talks about it here because she actually drove the route too. And they said when you get out, past King Road and out into that open fields where his cell phone was pinging allegedly, it's very dark out there. There's no street lights. There's no nothing. It's almost like no light pollution out there. And, to think, is that where, this murder weapon could be? Is this where the clothing could be that he wore? I mean, I would think by now they're probably still continuing to search that area. I think there's been some rumors that possibly there's I believe a lake or a river that's near there that this this could have been discarded in. But yeah, it's a very desolate, not well lit area that he allegedly drove through for about 20 25 minutes.
Out everything we would want to see, a traffic light, a stop sign, a camera, a surveillance camera, just everything was
That's the $1
wonderful.
million
That's how I
question,
found Chris
Mike.
McDonough.
That's the $1
Now,
million
Chris
question.
McDonough, how long
And
were
I'm
you a
going to tell
homicide-
you, like I said, you have the PCA, you have the search warrant, you have, some limited news articles that's been written. I'm telling you, when this goes to trial, they're going to find out what all of this connection is. As of right now, we know that he was following 3 of the girls on Instagram. His account now has been deleted, but that has been confirmed before his account was deleted. I think this dude's just like an incel. He just hates women. We do know that 2 of the girls worked at a vegan restaurant. Possibly he could have been there. He saw them. started following them or researched, started following them Instagram, and just became angry at the fact that maybe he couldn't get, a woman like this. There's also been rumors out there that he's been to the house before, maybe at a party. There's the drug connection, the possible drug connection. So right now, that's the million dollar question, the $1 billion question. Like, what is the connection? But we'll play on.
Detective Chris?
13 years, Nancy.
Oh, man. Okay. Then you're going to get my next question. I've prosecuted a lot of crimes, literally thousands and thousands. Very rarely do you see a criminal use the old noodle, the noggin, the brain. And I'm thinking about Kohberger looking up the floor plan of the home on King Road before he went in and murdered
I
everyone.
mean, you got to think though too, Mike, when they get those cell phones and they subpoena all those cell phone, his cell phone, they go through his computer, you're going to see the forensic DNA of both those devices, and you know how we are with our phones. We're constantly on our phones. We're constantly on an app or sending a text or an email, videos, photographs. We haven't even had privilege to that information. Maybe there is a smoking gun on one of these devices, on his computer, maybe he searched, how to kill someone or whatever. I mean, that's going to be the smoking gun when we hear, possibly if we hear any of that type of information. So keep that in the back of your mind. We still haven't heard hardly anything in this case yet. And unfortunately, because of the gag order, we won't until this goes to trial.
Because normally criminals just barrel all up in there and let the chips fall where they may. They don't think it through. Believe me, I'm not congratulating him. I'm stunned, and it makes him even creepier. Not a technical legal term, but it makes him even creepier in my mind. Okay, now I've teed it up. Hit it, man.
Well,
The guy hasn't even
so
talked yet.
again, it goes back to how methodical
3 minutes.
he potentially could be. So the belief is, and so I talked to a guy named Greg Cooper, who's a former BAU. He was the chief of the behavior science unit. There is a belief that
Behavior
the behavior
Science Unit, BSU.
BAU, Behavior Analysis Unit.
Hold on. You throw some FBI jargon at me. Behavioral Analysis Unit. Now, most people don't know how to just and call up the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. How did you, A, get their number, and B, get them to call back?
Yeah, so Greg and I go back many years, and what we talked about was, is it, with as much research as he was putting into pre-incident
$2 super chat from
events,
One Up.
i.e. surveillance,
The stream, keep
around the
up the
community,
good work.
around the house,
The
all the
opinionated
pings,
idiot.
the
Thank
12
you so
pings
much.
that come back to his phone.
Appreciate that. We'll give
Is it possible
One Up
that
a bell
he was also
that.
taking a look on the internet in relationship to that particular target set, the 1122?
Okay, what did you just say? Remember, dummy down for me, man. Regular people talk.
Okay.
Are you trying to say, did he look at a floor plan?
Yes. And what tools would he have used to do that was the thought, right?
So real quick, let me get to this chat. Casey says, I think this is not Brian's first obsession, just my opinion, but I think he's probably stalked others before and gotten away with it. I think he's well practiced in stalking women. She also says, whether that's physical, in person, or online, I think this is not new behavior for him. And O'Brien definitely agrees, and I agree as well. There's also some rumors out there that, maybe this is not his first, allegedly his first murder. He might have some connections. You got to go back now and start looking. Look at the area that he lived in. Look in Pennsylvania. Is there similarities in any cases out there that we're seeing with Idaho. So those are things that you have to start thinking about and looking at as well.
So the belief is that Zillow.
I'm trying to take notes. Okay, I don't know shorthand. What tools? Hold on, did he use? He used to do this. Hey, got a question for you. Aren't a lot of building plans filed somewhere? I've never had to look up. Oh, wait, I did have to look up a building plan once for a bank robbery. But as it turned out, my bank robber was dyslexic and he did a robbery note.
That's funny.
So I didn't need all that
That is kinda funny,
background to
actually.
get a jury conviction because we did the handwriting comparison and he twisted all his letters. Like instead of N-A-N-C-Y, he put N-A-C-N-Y or what? He twisted letters
Pretty good.
all the way through his handwriting comparison. So I never even had to use my, all the floor plans I got for the bank. But isn't there somewhere where all of that is filed, or are those just public buildings?
Yeah, most of that can be filed at usually the city engineering or planning departments.
Yeah.
Whenever contractors pull permits for building, they have to also submit blueprints, and those blueprints are
Zillow
typically
listings,
kept
yep.
on file
Let's
by
do
a
this. Let
municipality.
me see, I'm gonna make you
But with the digital age here, the
a
belief
moderator.
was that
So
he was
welcome
utilizing
to the
essentially,
moderating chat. You see
Realtor.com,
now
those
a
types of sites
moderator.
Okay. All
actually-
right.
So much. You've been
Let
a
me just
big
let that
supporter
sink
of the
in.
stream.
So you're talking about like a Zillow or Realtor.com floor plans, not like a blueprint architectural floor
We'll
plan.
give her a badge or a
Correct.
wrench. I forget
Correct.
what it is.
Interesting.
It's a wrench.
Okay, go ahead. I like what you're saying, but I just have to, if I'm going to write it all down, it takes me a minute. Go ahead.
Yes, we have no problem. So because the belief is, obviously, he was very comfortable with the environment. Evidence of, he was able to navigate very
And she said
carefully
as
yet
well too.
succinctly
100%.
with inside of that residence. So the only available resource to him would have been those type of digital platforms to,
Isn't
kind
it
of
1122 King? Isn't that the address?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you looked
Yep.
it up to try to see the floor plan?
Yeah, it's already up there.
I
We've
have
done
and
video
it
on
is
it. If
online.
anybody wants to
Really?
see that.
Where did you go to? A rental site?
Yes, I went to Zillow, and then early on it was on an apartment rental site for college students.
Casey nailed it.
Okay.
You
So
kind of think
it
that she'd
showed-
probably do a little bit more research for her guests before he was on.
The interior of the house. And so the belief is that if he had that type of resource, would he have utilized it? And the thinking is, yes, in fact, based on the amount of study he put into that area as a whole.
If anybody's interested,
So I thought that was really
I'm
fascinating.
going to drop.
Not only was he,
I'm going to drop this link in if you want to take a look at it. This is actually pretty cool. It's got the complete interior. This link I just dropped has the complete interior of the house and basically does a virtual walkthrough of what happened that night. And if you actually go into the closet area, it has tons of case files and information in there. I've done a virtual walkthrough of that home. And I have a video here on my page if you guys want to dip into my videos and check it out. But if you want to just kind of quickly run through it, you can click that link, which is pretty cool.
methodical, but this
Someone
was
did
a
an
potential
outstanding
another
job putting that together.
piece of the puzzle for his thought process. And
Another
utilizing
thing, you and I talked about how I kept referring to it as an almost cul-de-sac because it looks like someone is trying to make an O and then doesn't go all the way around to join it together. And the address is right there in the corner. Another thing that you first brought to my attention, which I learned later there in Moscow, you can see practically every
Everywhere.
room
Yep.
from the outside.
Yep.
I don't know that there's any room. Maybe there's a bathroom you can't see into, but you can see everything.
I did some walkthrough of a video as well. Someone actually went out there and did some recording actually at night around the same time and just kind of give you a look. I mean, there's lights on everywhere out there. I mean, there's street lights, there's apartment lights, there's people that have their lights on at all hours of the night.
Yeah, and what isn't that fascinating when I know you stood there and I stood there also in that back parking lot area, that you can visually see not only
Right into the
into Maddie's room, you can see into Dylan's room, and this is where that I think I've always felt that cinder block underneath her window played a role in something, based on potentially a voyeurism, play here for him, and
tough.
working out his, deviance in relationship.
Crazy, Casey, if you've ever looked up like their TikTok videos, it's pretty insane. I mean, it gives you like some really good insight as to, who all those people were. And I mean, they didn't know this was coming. I mean, it's sad. They had no clue. They were sitting ducks. They had no clue. But you can actually look up like TikTok videos and look at their Instagrams, and it's sad. These kids had no idea that this was coming. They had no clue. I mean, this was a huge, incredibly frightening experience. I mean, I wouldn't even, I wouldn't even want to even put myself in that situation to even think about it. How frightening this is. But we'll play on
his
here.
fantasy levels. So yeah, those guys, those poor kids were like you had described in the past, Nancy. They were sitting in a fishbowl,
sitting ducks. That's it.
And it's really a tragedy that he had that
12
type
people
of
right now. If you
resource available to him.
if you just come in, I appreciate it. It gets to stream out in the algorithm.
The way that we would
really
find
would
that
appreciate
out
it.
is through a thorough analysis of his laptop, his iPad, his phone.
See, and this is what I just talked about. Everybody's kind of freaking out. Oh, there's just this minimal amount of evidence. They haven't even done forensic DNA, forensic analysis of, like I said, the phone, his computer, his laptop, all that. They're going to go through all of that,
including his work.
Yeah, everything.
Laptop or desktop that he may have there, to find out if he did that. And knowing him, he probably
13 people.
did,
Let's get those upvotes to 13.
Yeah.
Magic number.
Now, why do you say
I
that?
10 right now. I just need 3
Well,
more.
I think we're going to be surprised
Thanks, Casey.
with,
Appreciate that. Just 3
why
more.
he wouldn't have done that, because he took so much time with every move that he made that evening, and then he picked the perfect time to execute the crime, and then he left or it fell out. We don't know yet. Obviously,
If you just first time jumped over live on this stream and you're
that
not
could have been
subscribed
either
to
an
the channel, please
oversight
subscribe,
or
hit the bell
left
notification so
there,
every time I go
purposely
live,
to move
you
the
guys will know.
investigation.
I don't see
Go ahead.
that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't
Yep.
see that he left it there on purpose. I think that's crazy talk.
I don't.
Can I move on to something else now that you've given me something to stay up late at night worried about Brian Kohberger going on Zillow and finding people's floor plans? Can we talk about Brittany Hislop, who is professing her undying love
psycho.
for Brian Kohberger? And it leaves
That's another one that if you want to look up Brittany Hislop. Check out her Facebook account. I actually did a video on her and read through some of her Facebook posts, and she is I just say there's something going on there.
internet, quote, concerned about her child. She reveals she is, her word, not mine, lovesick over Brian Kohberger.
Yeah.
Did you hear that,
Right.
Sydney and Jackie?
Yeah.
There's a woman who says, she did say based on their astrological signs.
Oh, gee.
Red flag of warning.
Yeah, right.
And because their star charts are very similar, that she thinks he's the perfect
Casey
quote,
says she's a
male
few crayons
counterpart to her,
short of a
and
full
she
box.
has quote undying love,
Exactly.
even though she has never met or spoken to him. Help me understand this.
Well, I didn't understand it either, and I had to ask some forensic psychologists. And there is a dysphoria called hybristophilia.
Okay, you're going to have to
And-
spell that for me.
Okay,
Actually, that's kinda funny.
I had to do the same thing,
Yeah.
Nancy. It's HYBRISTOPHILLA.
Oh, Brian, I'm gonna do
And
something for
what it
you.
is,
You've
it's
been
a
hanging out.
fantasy-based dysphoria with an attraction towards serial killers
Oh, Brian,
and
got a
or
wrench.
criminals.
Just became a
A
moderator.
fantasy-based
for supporting.
disorder
Appreciate that.
where you're attracted to serial killers and other criminals, or just serial killers?
Both. It has all. It covers all gamuts of criminal act.
Hybristophilia, is that the name of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
And so he's apparently getting all types of, contact, fan base type of connection here from like
Now,
this young
isn't
lady.
that an odd irony that before he allegedly committed the murders, he was frustrated because he couldn't get the attention of a woman, including
so.
possibly one or more of the victims.
Yeah.
And now he's getting unsolicited love letters. Can I quote you something? Okay. Her words, not mine. I don't know if Brian is or was single. Hello? Yes, he's single. I don't know if Brian is or was single when he supposedly.
I'm gonna say this started off pretty bad, but it's actually it's not that bad now. We've gotten through our kind of blah, blah.
The murders, but I wonder if he and I ever would have met.
Yeah, this is crazy. This lady.
If he would have liked me. Yes, lady, he'd like you.
Yeah.
He likes any woman that would even notice him. Wait a minute. Well, I'm sorry. I'll read it straight. Quote, I don't know if Brian is or was single when he supposedly committed the murders, but I wonder if he and I ever would have met, if he would have liked me, and if we could have connected well. And if we did,
It's the most run
and
on.
if he did, in fact, commit
it's
those
so run
murders,
on.
it doesn't mean he would have hurt me and been
No,
abusive.
not
Although
at
I don't
all, right?
personally know him and his temperament, I just know that ideally my true love and perfect match wouldn't hurt me or do me like others have that were wrong towards me. Okay, again, help me,
Mike.
Chris.
Mike, you still here?
Why would this
Mike's
woman
gonna get
believe
a
he's
wrench
her
too.
perfect
Mike is
soulmate?
now a moderator. Mike's
Nancy, that is a
supporter of the channel
mystery.
too. I'm gonna hook Mike up.
That even above my pay
he's
grade, to
still
be
watching,
honest
but-
with you, because you and I both know. I mean, here's a guy that's hanging around campus before the incidents, before the murders, and women are reporting him now that they're coming forward even more, which you and I talked about and predicted that we would start seeing, women coming forward saying, this guy was really odd. He would, he's staring at women to the point where they're following their gut instincts.
Yeah.
And they walked away and they left him. And then, of course, now they're reporting, hey, this is the guy that was, the creepy guy that I was, instinctively not feeling good about. And then the swing of that pendulum to the woman we're talking about here, I just don't understand it myself, to be honest.
I've got to give you another quote. We're never going to get to the other topics I had written down on the list. And that's all your fault, by the way, Chris McDonough. But let's blame Brittany Hislop for it. Okay, hold on. Her words.
Word
My
salad.
love
I kind of feel
interest
bad
is named
for
Brian and is accused
I kind of
of
feel
murder.
a
Now,
bit
see,
bad for her, but
right
wow,
there,
where's her family, man?
there has
Someone
to be an
needs
alarm going
to
off in
take
your
her
head.
internet away.
There is something
for a
very,
whole
very wrong
minute.
with me.
Exactly.
My love interest is named Brian, and he's accused of murder. And I just wish to connect with him above anyone else. The 35-year-old Kentucky singleton, mother of a teen son, gushed in one of her many, many Facebook posts about Kohberger,
She's
whom
crazy.
she's never met. One way to describe my feelings for him over the last week or so is kind of like being lovesick. Okay, I agree with part of that, the sick part. She began posting publicly about her infatuation with Brian Kohberger
Said he was
just 5 days
divine
after he's
masculine.
arrested.
I get an article
Hislope,
in a
who
place in the chat.
repeatedly points to her and Kohberger's astrological
You guys wanna
signs,
check
just
out
so you know.
The crazy
And
chick.
this will probably make a big difference.
Loves
They're both
Kohberger.
Scorpios. And their birth
From
charts,
Newsweek.
explaining why he could be her, quote, divine
Divine
masculine
masculine.
counterpart.
Yeah.
She says she's not drawn to him just for his smarts and courtroom demeanor. He's creepy as HELL in court. Chris McDonough.
Exactly, O'Brien.
You know, I remember
Two small
interviewing
words, wellness check.
at least one of the women that married one of the Menendez brothers.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she also had children, and she moved across the country to be closer to his prison facility.
Crazy.
I don't get it, Chris McDonough.
Yeah, and I think it's going to get worse, Nancy. I mean, these inmates now, even on death row, have access to digital,
Yeah.
tablets, and so it's going to open those avenues of communication even further. I know for a fact that certain people get communication online while on death row.
You do know you still talk like a cop, right? Just saying.
Sorry
It's
about
neither good nor bad. I'm just telling you. I mean, I can
Well, he was a former
smell
homicide
you a
detective.
mile away. Hey, got another thing for you before we continue down our path of hybristophilia. Do you believe recovery of the murder weapon is critical to prosecuting this case? Because I do not.
No.
Sure, I'd like to have the murder weapon,
Yeah.
but
We have the sheath and the
you can
DNA.
prosecute a murder case without a body, much less without the weapon.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with you 100%. I think the weapon would be an added bonus.
Yeah.
And it's more important to him than it is to prove the crime. I agree with you 100%.
You know, online, people are weighing in. You got to have the murder weapon, got to have the
No,
murder
you don't.
weapon. I'm guessing a lot of them have never tried or investigated a
Right.
homicide case.
Right.
You don't always have the murder
No,
weapon.
she's right.
In fact, even remotely intelligent criminal will break down the gun and throw its parts in
Right.
different places, will get rid of the knife. You know, of course we want the murder weapon, but how badly do you think it's going to hurt the state if we never find that weapon, Chris McDonough?
I don't think it's going to hurt
No.
them due to the fact that you have the autopsy. And what I mean by that is, that a knife was utilized. And if you can put him into that home, and it looks like the digital evidence is pointing to that DNA in the home,
Right.
then you got it. It's there.
What at this juncture do you believe is the single most powerful evidence for the state?
The sheath.
Well, of course, the DNA on the sheath, on the but I think the digital evidence is going to be significant as well.
And keep in mind, I've said this too. You haven't even heard about his car. I mean, the FBI is going to tear that thing apart and swab it everywhere. And if there is a shred of DNA from any of the victims in that vehicle, if there's a hair from Kaylee's dog in that car, if there's a human hair from one of the victims, if there's skin cells from one of the victims, I mean, it's amazing the evidence in DNA that they can lift now. Any of those victims' personal, DNA is in that car. Open and shut case.
Forensic footprint.
The digital evidence, such as the 12 times his phone pinged
Right.
near 1122 King, although they will say the defense is going to argue
We drove
that
back and
ping
forth.
bounced off a different cell tower, which is completely possible.
Right.
What else? They can explain away the DNA on the sheath by saying, yeah, I attended a knife and gun show and I touched a lot of knife sheaths. But what I find compelling is all of the evidence when you look at it in toto, in the totality, all together.
Stop this real quick. Casey says, do you imagine the frustration the FBI was watching him clean that car before they got the arrest warrant passed by the judge? They must have been absolutely mortified. Yeah, absolutely. But, I'm still sure and I'm pretty confident that there's ways that they can find, find things out. I think I've even seen spots where people have tried to clean blood with bleach and they use that chemical luminol, and luminol will still illuminate some blood trace. So even if you try to, cover it with bleach or what, cleaning solutions, they still can pull things with luminol.
Together. Yeah, you can explain away one
Luminol
or two
detects
things,
the
Chris
presence
McDonough,
of
but
blood.
when
If
you
anybody
start
doesn't know what
piling
that is.
on the
Sorry, I have a
evidence,
cold. I had a cold the
for
last couple
instance,
days, so
we
I'm very
believe that he
nasally.
may have been stalking one or more of the
You
four
guys just hit
victims
that upvote button. Let's get 2 more
online,
upvotes. Let's
probably
bring it
on
to 12.
Insta,
I'm at 10 right
trying to
now.
communicate with
Real
them.
quick.
There's just so much. The fact that he's stalking the campus, we have him there in the student union and other places just staring at
2 more.
people.
Let's get. I
So
got
he's not at
13
his
people
campus,
watching. 2
Washington
more
State University.
upvotes.
He's
3
at
more
their
upvotes.
campus. And that student union building, the co-op, is not far
I'm
at
gonna welcome
all
the
from
person in
1122
from
King, where the four victims were
Twitch
murdered.
that's watching as
So
well.
we've got him all around their sphere.
Yeah, I'm
And
feeling
then the DNA
better.
for me
I'm
is the
getting
icing
there.
on the cake.
Starting to feel
I
a
think
little
we're going to
better.
have a lot more, though, Chris McDonough. Do you?
It's just been frustrating. It's
Absolutely.
sitting
There
right
are
here.
tools that haven't been discussed. We just heard about them real subtly on the
Thanks.
trial going
Appreciate it,
on
O'Brien.
today.
Appreciate that.
One of them is a tool called Gladiator.
Yeah.
If you look, and those kind of tools, for obvious reasons, the public isn't aware of their total capabilities, but those are the type of tools that will put Brian Kohberger closer to the event.
And do you want to explain how Gladiator works?
Well, it
This is interesting. I have not heard about this, so this is kind of some breaking news for me right now. This gladiator that they're going to talk about.
let me just say this: it narrows the scope of those tower pings.
How?
I love you, Nancy. I can't go there right now until the experts testify on that stuff. But I can just tell you this: I've seen it work to the point where a tower ping has been narrowed down to within feet.
Exactly. I've had
And that's what I was talking about. If you guys didn't catch the beginning of the stream, that I talked about in the Alec Murdoch trial right now. I was watching some testimony today, and they were doing specifically right that with his GPS. They literally were pinging him and tracing his footsteps down to to feet, in coordinates in time by seconds where he was. So I mean, you're going to see a lot of this in trial. And that's why I said, everybody, oh, there's no evidence, he's going to walk, he's innocent. I'm telling you, there is so much evidence that we haven't seen or heard of yet.
narrowed down to within a block.
Yeah.
Feet. That's pretty amazing. So they're not going to be able to use the defense. Oh, yeah, I was on my cell at that time, but nowhere near the murder scene. And this could be pinging off a tower 2 miles from here. But with Gladiator ability, you can narrow that ping down, I know, to a block.
Right.
And you're saying even to feet. Guys, I'm just wondering how he is being treated, as I call it, Camp Flower at the county jail, where they sometimes wake the inmates up with soft music and they have pizza night on Friday night. They order out pizza.
What?
Never heard anything like it in my life. But hey, I I wonder if they have him in isolation. I believe I've heard he's in solitary.
Yeah, so Casey said, I heard your phone performs like a digital handshake with Bluetooth devices and Wi-Fi without actually connecting completely. Massively narrows everything down, I reckon. Yeah, I actually did a video about this as well on my channel. You can go back and watch it. And it basically talks about, iPhones, Android phones are constantly sending signals out to areas in and around your house to Bluetooth devices. It's funny, like I'll go out to my car and sometimes I have to connect my Bluetooth into my car and it will pick up you guys have probably done that. It picks up all the signals or the Wi-Fi information that's in that area that's available. That's basically sending a ping out to that Wi-Fi device or that Bluetooth device. So it's trying to connect. It's saying, hey, let me in. Nope, let me in. Nope, that type of relationship with those devices. There's been some rumor out there that I believe in Maddie's room that she had a Bluetooth speaker. So if they can use any type of that information, I mean, if Kohberger isn't around that house or inside that house and his phone tried to connect to that device, and they can forensically go through that and find out if there's a connection there, again, it's huge evidence for the prosecution. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Casey.
Isn't that right, Sid? Didn't we? Yeah. Why do you think they've got him in solitary?
Well, I think they're concerned about his ability to communicate to the outside, as well as what's his threat risk internally to the jail.
You mean, will somebody try to kill him?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, darn. Okay. That said, is that normal for them to be put in solitary? No, I want him to go.
Yeah, so we had his phone off for a certain amount of time, but that still doesn't mean anything as far as I'm telling you. I think just what this gentleman was talking about, and I forget the name of the device or what program they're using. Even though your phone is off, it still possibly could send a signal to try to connect to certain devices. So even just with that lost time, the 40 minutes or whatever it was that was off, it still doesn't matter, because if they just even show that his phone previous to that was connecting to some devices or whatever, it's still really good circumstantial evidence in this case.
On trial, in a fair trial that's not going to be reversed, because he needs to have justice delivered to him in a court of law. So you believe it's in solitary for his own safety?
Yeah, I think they put him in there just to keep him away from general population for his own safety, and then give him some time to think and process. And so I believe that that's a wise move currently.
Well, thanks to you, Chris McDonough. I will never look at Zillow the same way again. Thank you for ruining that for me. Chris McDonough,
You're welcome.
we'll meet again. Thanks, buddy. Bye.
All right. So that painfully was the Nancy Grace segment, but I thought we got a lot of great information out of Chris McDonough over on the Interview Room YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do is finish out. I got about a 15-minute video. We'll probably end this stream around 10:30 or so. And we'll call it a night. I appreciate all of you guys sticking around this evening. It's been a lot of fun seeing everybody chat. Casey, O'Brien, thank you so much for keeping everything, entertaining over here, asking questions and kind of, moving along with the stream. I know these get long sometimes, but I do appreciate all your support. So let's finish this out. Basically, the last video we're going to watch is on Chris McDonough's channel. It's from the Interview Room. And we're going to hear from Kerry Rawson, Rawson. She's the daughter of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, serial killer. And she's going to talk about some similarities between Kohberger and her father. And I believe there was some rumor that Kohberger was either trying to and I don't know if this has been squashed yet, trying to communicate with her father or in some kind of way. But let's check out this video. We'll end up the stream after that. I'll kind of give you my final thought. All right, let's play this one out here.
Well, first going back to your other question, I, being a little younger here, kind of live on social media. And it was shocking how much involvement was going on in the general public with the Idaho case from the get-go. There's just a massive surge of true crime coverage. These internet sleuth groups, there's ethics questions arising in these places. I actually almost likened it to like a live ongoing murder mystery going on for the last few months, but you're talking about real people for young people that lost their lives. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. Just going back to what you were saying before, in regards to.
So here's the thing that I have that kind of bothers me when people talk about this, and I'll give you my opinion on it because that's what we do here on the Opinionated Idiot Show. You know, it comes down to things like this. I mean, there's movies that are made, there's programs that are on TV, people watch, you know, Law and Order, and I realize these are real life situations. These are real lives that were taken. But I think it becomes, when something like this happens, there's so much coverage about it and so much mystery. And as human beings, we're very curious by nature, and we want to know things, and we want to research things, and we want to find out and discover. And I think that's just human instinct, the curiosity factor that we all have inside of us. And through those things, I think you start to find that you maybe connect with these individuals. You know, maybe you're like, hey, I'm a young college student. I'm around the age of these particular individuals. I can almost, you know, I've been scared, or I've been through, you know, a situation like this, or, and I think just the magnitude of it as well. You have 4 people that were mysteriously killed in the middle of the night, and there's no suspect. And there was no trace of a suspect for weeks. And there was tons of coverage going on. And you're kind of almost like, are they going to catch this person that did this? Or is this going to be another unsolved crime? You know, we have that curiosity because we want to find the person or persons that did this. We want to bring those people to justice. And I think that's, you know, that's just kind of my thought on that. I don't know how you guys feel about that. You know, you can let me know down there in the chat, but we'll continue to play through this here.
Kohberger and my dad. So my dad was 28 when he committed his first murders. It was 4. It was part of the Otero family in January of 74. So my father went from breaking and entering, stalking, what he called trolling for victims, simple like burglary of like you know, lingerie and stuff. So he went from that to an attempted kidnapping. He reported them in the fall of 73, straight into what was his first murders. Now he's a serial killer because he committed, you know, 6 more murders after that, 7 scenes in total. But if he had been caught after his first one, we would call him a mass murderer. So one of my questions tonight for the panel when we get there is, you know, was Kohberger a budding serial killer? Like, we have to call him a mass murderer because he's been caught. But I don't believe he would have been stopped. I believe we were looking at a serial killer.
Be right back.
I don't know if we're allowed to use that term here. I mean, we can't, but if he had continued. Also, with my father, then being the same age, entering in a house with multiple people, my father actually didn't even expect the adult male to be home when he did enter in 74. So he got into a situation he was not fully prepared for, and he had to call it what he calls improvising. I believe Kohberger maybe didn't know how many people were in the house. In my opinion, I believe he was maybe targeting the young.
So Casey's just giving a answer to the question that I asked. She says it taps into many people's worst nightmares. Our brains try to fill in the gaps to almost soothe ourselves. Wild and crazy speculation doesn't help, though, long as it's respectful and constructive. And that's something that I've done here on this channel. Is I've treated everything that I talk about on this channel with respect. And I've been constructive in my conversations. And when I started to talk about this, I didn't go out on crazy conspiracy theories, things that might have gotten some of the channels in trouble. I get it. That's all clicks and views and all that shit. But I try to have very ethical conversations and just give my opinion. We're all right to our own opinion. We all have the right of the First Amendment in this country to speak our voice and speak our thoughts. And I try to keep it very adult over here. And, sometimes I might bring up some of those controversial things to have conversation about, but I didn't go in and say, oh, it was the guy that was in the hoodie, he was following them around, all that shit. It was the ex-boyfriend and all that. That's just basically playing Clue at that point. You have no fucking idea, but I really waited to talk until they, they had someone really narrowed down, and then come to find out it was Brian Kohberger. So, sorry, I'm very nasally. Casey says, yes, you're absolutely very much like that. And I appreciate that. I've seen some wild lives from some creators on YouTube and noped out real quick. Yeah, there's some good lives out there. I like the Drunk Turkey Show. I actually was a guest via a phone conversation one time when they first started talking about Idaho 4. And I have to give them a lot of congrats. I mean, I don't know what the hell they did, but they caught that algorithm, and I literally watched them go from like barely 1,000 subscribers to like 30,000 almost overnight. So congrats to them. I've actually thought about trying to get them over here on the channel sometime and having, a conversation over here and just seeing, what they think at this point. Cause they're a fun channel to watch. But big shout out to Drunk Turkey Show. Absolutely. They're cool guys. They're cool guys. All right, let's keep playing through this, and then we'll wrap up the evening. Appreciate
Women on
all
the
of you
third
guys.
floor
Appreciate you all.
ran into people awake on the second floor. My father wouldn't have left anybody alive if he could have. He
15
did have one
people
person that
watching right
survived the
now.
second
Just
run
hit
in
that upvote button down there
74,
below, the thumbs up
but
button.
that was not
Real quick.
intentional. So
Would
my
appreciate
question is, was Kohberger aware there were two surviving women in that house? And how did he feel when he found that out after it became news? The differences between them, my father is a strangler, so there was only one stabbing in 74, and that's only because he had to finish it quickly in his own words, and he didn't like it. So there was a big difference there in my father's MO and Kohberger's choice of weapons. And my father doesn't like blood. I would assume Kohberger's highly attracted to it. So there's a big difference there. Another important thing about
Thank
my
you,
father
Ryan.
is he was a criminology
$5
student. So
super chat.
he studied
Love
criminal
the
justice
show.
at Wichita
You're the
State.
man.
He literally
You have
went
some
into
change.
classes right around the
You
same time he
kicked
committed his
in
first
that
murders.
kicking
Then he
that
had
cold to the
access
curb.
to means and
Thank you, bro. I
methods,
appreciate
getting
that.
to talk to
Give
law
you a
enforcement
bell
while
on
they
that
were
one. You're the
working the
man.
BTK cases.
You are a
So he murdered
wrench
7
in my
people
hat. That's
in
big
the
love. Big
70s
respect to you
while
as well. Thank you.
studying his
Great
own
show. Love
crimes
it.
in classes and enjoying that and basically making fun of them and mocking them in his head while they were sitting there trying to figure out who this murderer is, while wearing possibly Mr. Otero's watch. My father stole trinkets and mementos. So he was walking around wearing Otero's watch.
Yeah, that's interesting too. I wonder if Kohberger you know, if he did do these crimes, if he took any type of like memento or like a souvenir, because a lot of serial killers or mass murderers will do something like that to remember, you know, the situation. So that's very interesting too. I wonder if if something like that has been found and brought into evidence yet. Uh, oh God, imagine if he took like photos or something like that. Jeez, but that wouldn't really make sense because he wouldn't have enough time.
Possibly
But
seen at the second murder. So that's another question I have. Did the law enforcement find anything in Kohberger's apartment, mementos? I would
oh,
assume
it's so funny I
possibly,
just said that.
but we're gonna have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right after Kohberger was arrested, it came out that he studied under Dr. Catherine Ramsland in his undergrad and master's program at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. I deal with PTSD, one of the joys of my life, and I was relieved to hear that Kohberger had been arrested. I instantly was sort of back to my own 2005 arrest of my father and, you know, how that was handled. And then thinking of Kohberger's family and their no-knock warrant. And then when I heard the Ramsland connection, I got really ill, nauseated, and was dealing with active PTSD for about a day. I wasn't going to say anything publicly, and then it was kind of getting ahead of me in the media. And so I made a statement simply on Twitter. And then my life went nuts for a few weeks, and now here I am. I had concerns that Kohberger could have contacted my father via letters. It's very common for the general public to write my father. It can be common, especially with criminology students. So I had put that concern out there. So of course my father has access to TV and radio, newspapers. So TMC contacted my father through a jail app called Getting Out. I didn't even know my father had electronic communication.
Wow.
So as a victim, I had to process that. That
That's
took about a
interesting.
day. Finding out through the media, my father had electronic communication.
Wow.
I verified it, that it was actually, he does have access to this app. And my father said no, that he had not had contact with Kohberger, but he said he was sure Kohberger had studied him in class, which of course we know. I mean, especially under Dr. Ramsland
Right.
and her Dangerous Minds serial killer class, obviously my father would be studied. Ramsland's basically an expert on my father. And then my father wanted to make sure and point out that, you know, my family, that he loved my family very much, but we haven't been in contact. So he wanted to push that in there, you know, let everybody in the world know that, you know, because he's a narcissist. And then he mentioned he wanted to compare his own crimes to Kohberger's. And so
Wow.
he educated all of us in that way too.
That's
My
wild.
father is a sexual sadistic psychopath, pathological liar, and a narcissist. So whenever you're talking about my father, you need to keep those things in mind.
Right.
So giving my father a microphone, this is what happens very quickly, where he has to insert himself back in and bring up his own crimes and make sure people are paying attention to him.
Wow.
It's just my father. It's never been any different for my father.
Thank you for your revealing your brutal soul honesty here in terms of what you've
Right.
been, you know, suffering all of these years. I think everybody on this panel, we understand that we don't understand what you've experienced, and nor could we ever. But we do understand that you have survived something that is of a depth that I don't think the human condition, unless you've been in it, is capable of quite, you know, grasping, wrapping their mind around it. And, you know, thank you for your willingness to put it out there for a moment there, because I know that's not very easy. But at the same time, I respect you for the fact that I really know that deep down inside you feel the importance of what your mission is through your advocacy to helping these types of problems. And so thank you for sharing just even that little piece of who you are. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Well, it had been reported that Kohberger had moved to Washington by August because his first stalking incident was around the 22nd. But then 2020 had just run a special where somebody was doing haircuts on Kohberger.
Huh.
And she showed a screenshot that he had received a haircut as early as July 7th. Now, that's
Wow.
the earliest I had seen
That's the
reported of
first
him
I heard of
being in
that.
Washington. I haven't seen that anywhere else. I was sure it was August. He would have graduated from DeSales. They had a walk in May, but they were in quarters. And so he was still finishing classes in June based on my research. So he wrapped up classes the end of June, about the 30th. So he maybe was out of Washington by the 7th. I did question that date. I haven't been able to authenticate if it was July or August, but we do know that he was there by August. One of my questions was, we found out that Washington State University has access to a crime lab with cameras. Now, there was a whole process to be able to access those cameras, a screening process, and signing in and signing out with locked doors. Fox News reported this. My question is, because of how easy it is to access body cams, and Kohberger was studying cyber forensics. So I'm wondering, is it possible, could he have forwarded like the FOIA body cams before the murders to stalk these women cyberly? I mean, that's one of my questions that's out there that we don't know, because I'm sure there would have to be records if he did, try to access these records, or did he get into that lab? We don't know. And another question then, going back to
This is really fascinating. And I'm going to look and see if I can find more of this segment of the video. The only clip I could come up with this, maybe there is a fuller clip and we'll run through this, but this is, just hearing Carrie's account and the questions that she's asking is because she's been through this scenario, with her father. So she knows a lot about all of these, ways to forensically look into people or patterns that they were doing. She's very well educated on this case. I have to give her a lot of big ups on that.
To Gary, did he travel out there in March possibly to visit the university or to apply to the PhD program? I don't think that's been answered. I do know he was taking some of his master's courses remotely, but he was also on campus because there's reports of him arguing with Dr. Ramslin and having access to the DeSales crime lab. So there was a combination of online and in-person classes. Plus, you have to remember that's during COVID, so he was more remote. So I agree with Gary. He maybe could have been traveling around. So while they need to be checking Pennsylvania, they might need to be checking other unsolved crimes and other weird oddities. So the question is, did he target and fixate on them in August when he was driving around, what my father would call trolling, or was he cyber stalking them earlier through their social media? That's another thing I've wondered about. So my father was in the military he was supposed to go to college and he was terrible at it. So he knew, my grandpa told him, you're going to get drafted. My grandpa was a World War II veteran. And my dad has 3 younger brothers. And my grandpa said, look, you guys are going to get drafted. So you need to just go sign up. So my father was in the Air Force from 66 to 70. Now, he didn't see any action, but he traveled overseas into Turkey and Korea and Japan. And he actually was experimenting with bondage with prostitutes, according to my father, in Asia. One of his first sexual experiments then. Earlier, you were talking about the Kohberger and the young woman. There's a lot of immaturity with somebody like my father. He had a hard time with women in high school, didn't really know how to approach them, or got too fixated on them, got kind of lovesick is a word my father used. My father really didn't have any relationships until he met my mom. It was a quick 9 months, and then they got married. So my father did have what, as far as we know, is a natural, normal, almost and a loving relationship with my mom, but there is still an immaturity to my father. like with my father's crimes, they were very sexually motivated, but he never raped. He would masturbate next to the victims after their deaths or while they were dying, but there wasn't like a penetration type rape or anything like that. That would have, like, to my father, that was crossing the line. Even my father has lines, and that was one of his lines. Back to the like the security guard stuff. No, my father, after the military, my dad loved badges and uniforms. He just loved to he loved to have a uniform, even if it was just to take the garbage out. It looked different than taking out the trash and walking the dog. He loved his Boy Scout uniform. He was never a cop. I swear to the Lord that he took the test to be a cop, but the police said no. I swear he went in and did it. He was always like sort of a wanted to be a cop. So he was a compliance officer. He was in ADT, so he was in security. So after the Otero murders, there was a big upswing in Wichita community families wanting to have security systems. And so my father actually got a job installing security systems because of the crimes he had committed. And he always enjoyed that little irony that he was in people's houses, why they were all very scared of him. And then in 91, he became a compliance officer in Park City in the suburbs we live north of Wichita. And he totally overhauled the whole thing. His uniform, he created a uniform and had a badge, and he had a nightstick and a knife, and he carried a shotgun in his truck. And he looked like something right out of like a country sheriff, like literally down to the brown uniform. And he worked down the hall from the cops. And then he kept all of his BTK binders and whatnot in his office down the hall from the cops, and thought that was all very fun too. D'Angelo, Golden State, he was a cop and a criminology student. So he's another big one that has that same sort of profile. Back to your question, did Kohberger, do I think that he went into criminology for what we call white hat purposes, or did he already know he had the chance to be a black hat? I think it was probably both. I know my father really wished he had just been a normal person. It was a huge struggle, like you were talking about, back to childhood, of kind of fighting off those demons and then finally just giving into them. And then once you cross that line, it gets easier and easier after that. So I do believe, based on what you're saying and what we know, Kohberger struggled with a lot of those same things that we know my father did and many of these type of predators.
Wow. I could listen to Carrie talk for hours. She's very engaging, obviously very knowledgeable about the subject, and, like we like to say, knows her shit. But my friends, I think this is going to wrap up the show for this evening. My final thought is, we just keep peeling back the layers here. Absolutely, Casey. Absolutely. We're just keep peeling back the layers as this moves closer to hearings and trials. I try to just do as much sleuthing around as I can to find information on this particular case. I'm going to jump subjects, I believe, on Monday night and talk about the Alec Murdaugh trial. If you haven't been following that, we'll get a little bit caught up to speed on that. I have a special stream on Sunday night. I have a viewer of the channel that's going to call in on Sunday night and give her similar account to either it was her or a friend that was in a similar situation like the Moscow situation. So I'm very curious to hear the details of that. So we'll have that caller on Sunday night. Again, the stream will start 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm trying to nail down, what nights I'll be streaming, but right now they've been pretty spontaneous and pretty consistent. It's been either Sunday or Monday night and Wednesday night. I switched this week a little bit just to try things out to see how many viewers I could pull in, but I think either Sunday or Monday, Wednesday nights have been my best nights. The only thing about Sunday, I know a lot of people watch The Last of Us, and that's right around 9 o'clock when I start streaming. So Monday's been a little bit better. But, you know, we'll keep playing through. But I will be back here on Sunday night with that guest, that calling guest. You're not going to want to miss that show. I want to appreciate all of the chatters this evening in the chat. O'Brien, my wrench, Casey, my wrench. You guys are always here. It's really nice to see you guys. Had Mike at the beginning of the show as well. Big shout out to him. So I don't know. That's going to be it. I'm going to get some sleep. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Actually, just a great Saturday, but I'll see all you guys back here on Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. Casey, have a good night. O'Brien, have a good night. I will see you guys on the flip side. Don't miss the show on Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll pop up the reminder tomorrow morning. Just go over, hit your notification, and you'll be reminded. Until then, we'll see you. Bye, guys. Good night. Bye.